Live now? Yesterday, you joined me alongside Hugh Burley, the Director of Information Security at Thompson Rivers University. We went down a very pleasant and enjoyable highway where we journeyed through his experiences of experiential learning, lifelong learning, and his process to becoming the Director of Information Security. Today, we continue that journey, but with a couple of stormy clouds on the horizon. We go through a few periods of turbulence, we go through a few periods of challenge. Statistics tell us that in 2013, 11% of women made up the global cybersecurity workforce. Today in 2020, by some estimates, that number has grown to 20% and perhaps even 25%. Depending on your vantage point, that might be a significant jump, but there's or not, and there may still be a long way to go. Today, we're joined by Helen Oakley, who will be talking to us about this experience and this journey of increasing the number of women represented in the world of cybersecurity. More importantly, being the Power Hour, we'll be speaking truth to power as Helen talks to us about her journey and what she's been through in the process of leading cyber ladies here in Toronto. Helen, welcome to the Power Hour. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody who's joining us today. Helen?
Hello, everyone. How are you?
I'm quite well. I'm quite well, Helen, and it's a pleasure to have you on the Power Hour. This is the second Power Hour, and the whole objective of today is to have a candid and informative discussion on who Helen Oakley is and really what inspired you to do what it is that you do. Helen, I'm not going to go to that or look for that seminal moment or moments when you said, I need to do something for women in cyber. But I'm sure there must have been some particular incident which got you thinking about how can you set up some sort of a group where more women in cybersecurity who are interested in it can come and join and learn from your experience. Helen?
For sure. There's definitely not a single moment when I have Eureka kind of set up, but it was a journey that led me to this decision with also my friend Nitika. We started this together. I started my cybersecurity career before I set up this group here in Toronto, and my experience was that there's always not enough mentors, there's not enough support. I had to do a lot of things, learn a lot of things on my own. I did have very good mentors, and all of them being men. So men have supported me throughout my career. I really appreciate that. But I feel, I felt that at certain level when I reached, I could also support women. And because I was lacking support from other women, and I saw I was in my organizational area the only cybersecurity expert among many, many other colleagues. So I thought, we could improve that. And actually what triggered me is when I met Karen Elazari a few years back on one of the conferences, and she was talking about this global movement of leading cyber ladies and how they had this meetup in Tel Aviv and so on. I'm like, Karen, we don't have anything in Toronto. I would love to have something like that. So we started to work together with Nitika and Karen and other chapter leads in other areas. And this is how we launched our chapter here in Toronto. And this is how we've been going since then for a couple of years now, almost couple of years, inviting more women to cybersecurity and making this experience more comfortable for everyone.
Use the buzzword there, comfortable. I often like to tell my students, and I've said this a lot of times, I tell them to be to be comfortable with being a little uncomfortable. And I'm going to take us into a little bit of that territory right now. This question around, or this discussion around women in cybersecurity has been happening, for a substantial amount of time now. At least in my foray into the space, at least the last 2 years, I've been hearing different facets of this conversation. I'm more of a school of thought of, enough talking and more doing. But I want to ask you this, Helen. Why is it such an important topic that we have, for example, with CyberX, an entire conference dedicated to women in cyber? Is it that important of a topic that it warrants a separate discussion in and of itself?
I'll tell you, I'm also more of a doing person rather than talking. And
Yeah.
I'm always pushing myself to be uncomfortable, because if we are comfortable, we're not progressing. But well, also what I've learned, there is certain comforts that you do need to provide, and those are comforts of being able to speak up, being
Yeah.
able to um, receive the help you need, because you cannot do it yourself. You do need help, and there are a lot of smart people who can help improve yourself. And I
Yeah.
think what I've noticed that many women, first of all, they don't think they are capable maybe to do things, or they are good enough. That is
Yeah.
not true. And this is why I've learned to talk more. I've learned to express myself more, to tell them it's not true. You are capable, you are smart, you're brilliant, and you can do so much better. Our industry can do so much better to have you here with us, solving these complex problems of cybersecurity that need so much opening of minds and different backgrounds in order to solve these problems. And this is why I think it's important to invite more women as well, because if we are only minded, solving certain problem, we're not gonna uncover the best solutions, right?
Yeah.
We may still have certain gaps, but when we involve different minds and different backgrounds, including women who might think slightly different than men in some cases, that could be a big benefit. And it's important to speak up about that, and actually give others opportunities to speak as well about them.
When we talk about others, this is a it's a loaded term when we use the word others for the risk of otherizing other people. And you have to be careful when we talk about, the term, when we say women in cyber. In your experience, when we talk about women in cyber, are we also talking about the importance of other minority groups, be it sexual minorities, be it racial and ethnic minorities, be it our indigenous communities? Do you feel that the concepts and the discussions we have around women in cyber encompass more than just women and more than just gender?
Definitely. And this is why, as leading cyber ladies, we have ladies in our name, but we are inclusive to everybody. And we recognize that we don't have statistics for this other minority groups, right? We started by gender statistics, and that was as our um, global movement, right, of all countries, just to
Yeah.
find what is the difference in gender. But we haven't got to the point to actually see statistics for minorities. And I'm saying it's much, much worse. This
Yeah.
is why it's important to be inclusive, and to be diverse in any possible sense.
Yeah. I think the idea of inclusivity obviously resonates with positivity, obviously resonates with this kind of society that we would like to build, not just from a political standpoint, but from a professional standpoint as well. But I want to get a little bit into the stormy clouds that I was mentioning in my introduction. What is the effect of not thinking about this inclusivity? How does that transpire in the world of cyber?
Well, like I mentioned, if we are trying to solve a one-sided uh, problem only from one side, if we envision this problem only from one side, if I think the way you think, and we're trying to solve the problem, we're never going to solve it in the best possible way, right?
Yep.
And we might be able, it will take us longer time, or it's not going to be the best possible solution. If we get together with people who think differently, and I think that's the key point, we have to be able to gather people in the same room who think differently in order to solve the problem. And in cybersecurity, in our stormy daily life, it's very important to have this kind of mindset and different backgrounds in order to solve solutions.
So, Helen, how did you find your space in cybersecurity and become such a important voice, not just in key topics around cybersecurity, whether it's ethical hacking, whether it's red team, blue team environments, but also to be this voice of conscience? How did you come to this position that you're in? Let's hear a little bit about your story, Helen.
For sure. I think I like this quote, be brave, right? And you're halfway there, or show up and you're halfway there. Because from I don't have cybersecurity education, official education, the opportunity that the young people have today. Today, we have these different degrees and certifications that we can go and achieve. Back then, years ago, we didn't have that. And I had completely different background. So I started also in software development, but separately. And only by curiosity and actually being brave and pushing myself, I was able to proceed. And it wasn't a very easy journey. Also balancing the family and kids, and other responsibilities at work that I had. I was curious about it. And I think this is why people see reflection in me, because a lot of people coming from different backgrounds and they say, I have no idea what it is, but it is so curious and I want to learn more. And said, this is possible and you can do this if you just continue learning, right? And cybersecurity, even if you got education yesterday, tomorrow it may not be completely applicable because this topic is ever changing. So I think it's very important to show people that as long as you're capable of continuous learning, you can be successful in cybersecurity. And no matter what's your background, gender, wherever you come from, it is possible. And I believe hearing that from me as a live example, people heard that and people saw themselves and they follow and they become successful in their path.
I said this yesterday in my discussions with Hugh Burley is that cybersecurity, just like AI for that matter, or many of our data driven environments today, is a lot about problem solving. And how you solve a problem really draws from memory. And memory draws from your experiences, be it at childhood or growing up. It's not a very fixed thing, it's subjective, it's subject to different contexts, so on and so forth. And I often see this in my classroom, and I do apologize if this observation is a little bit obtuse on my end, but I'm going to share it in this safe space and ask you that I do notice that a lot of my female students, or those who choose not to identify, compared to sort of the male students, have a very different way of approaching problems and solutioning. Is that your experience as well? And if that's true, why is that the case, and what's the value of that in a cybersecurity SOC environment, for example?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I think women naturally, and I don't want to generalize, right?
Yep.
But even speaking about women that I know, myself, right? Let's put it that way. We are more oriented towards humans, I would say, or interactions with humans, right? So we may be more emotional in some cases. On a man, maybe they're more logical thinking. However, I wouldn't say that's true for everybody.
Yep.
Uh, but in general, I think that slight difference makes a big difference in solving problems. The way we approach, because if, let's say, if architects or technical people think only about solutions from technical perspective, they may not see the whole picture, how human being is actually going to be reacting there. And I think it's important when we talking about the threats, right? And the human element, the human being is the biggest element of all security threats. So if you think how they affected, how certain situations are affecting our employees, right, our
Yep.
users or people around us, it is important aspect to consider. And I believe that women bring more of that to the table. They raise the flags, right? And also, when we're talking about a company, business continuity, disaster recovery, and all that aspect, what happens actually to all the company employees? How do we behave, right,
Right.
when we are under the crisis? And people make a lot of mistakes, and unless we recognize that, we won't be able to achieve smoother process or the better solutions.
Yeah, and I always say this to my students is that technology is sort of the campfire around which we all share our stories. And groups like Leading Cyber Ladies, I would assume, ultimately allow for more of these stories and experiences to be shared. Let's go a little bit into, the Leading Cyber Ladies initiative. Can you tell us a little bit about, I know you mentioned why you started it up and why you created a Toronto chapter, but I want to go back to those early days. How easy was it for you to quote unquote recruit members in? And did you often get questioned as to, hey, why are you doing this? It's a lost cause. Or what was the reception like in the community? Was Helen a lone warrior, or did she have an entire army ready to hop on board with her?
I remember our first meetup like yesterday. So Nitika and I, Nitika is my co-lead for
Yep.
chapter in Toronto. We announced out of the blue on a meetup, announced that we have this women in cybersecurity meetup happening in January, and we announced it a few months before in November. So we did organize. We had a space at the SAP office where I work, and they supported initiative because in SAP we also have a women in technology group. So supported this initiative after work in the evening, and surprisingly, we had quite a lot of people coming in, and I still have this photo. I will post it after this live session
Sure.
for everybody to see. But this first photo of people, I think it was around 30 or 40 people that came over out of the blue. And people from SAP is like, what, they just saw the invite and they came over? Like, yes, I guess they're interested. We didn't have to do a lot to recruit members. All we had to do is to be ourselves, and we've been open about it. Like, look, we want to start this, and it's not for me or Nitika. We want it for everybody. And I think this welcoming environment was so important. And we had later on so many feedbacks that they love coming in. They love learning about cybersecurity and talking to like-minded women who supportive and providing this atmosphere. And technical speaking, if you want to go speak at the conference, you're not going to just jump speaking at the
Yep.
conference. You need to
Yep.
practice somewhere, and this is the perfect space, safe space, friendly space where they can practice speaking and get this friendly feedback as well, how to improve themselves.
You know,
Another, yeah, go ahead.
No, and I wanted to really start unpacking a little bit about what happens during these meetups. But I do want to take us back just a little bit. So, we come to that starting point where it's Helen and she's invited everybody to say, let's have this discussion on leading cyber ladies and create a safe space. Wonderful. Over a period of time, can you talk to us about how it started to grow then? So, because I want to chart that trajectory and really come to the moment where you have different companies that then start supporting you. If I'm not mistaken,
Mhm,
the next one has Deloitte hopping on board, CyberX and IceVR. However, I really
mhm,
want to come to that moment of when companies started taking note of this and saying, hey, Helen's on to something here. Tell us a little bit about
mhm.
that journey.
Yes, that's also interesting that I wanted to mention,
Sure.
because we we position ourselves. We are not owned or promoted by a single company,
Right.
right? We want to avoid that. So our goal is around education for women, and a lot of companies hear that and they recognize that they also have lack of women in their cybersecurity field, and they feel that they can come over and see the talent right there in person, and that's interesting for companies. And what we provide for our members who come in there, for our leading cyber ladies, um, is that they have this open network, and we want to shift, we want to have different companies participating, and actually that's cool, as many as possible.
Yep.
One day we have, one time we have a meetup at one office, at SAP, another one at different office somewhere else, right? So we want to walk around and shift ourselves around downtown area so that everyone has opportunities to actually um, look into the company, meet the company employees, right? Network with the company organization, and as well organization see the value and share and find the talent there. So we kind of like unofficial social networking um, for people to find the future careers, future recruiters, knowledge, and just build that contact and relationship among each other.
If I could summarize what you just said into a nice little statement that I can put on a shirt, it's, don't let, know your own value. And if people don't, let it not be you who doesn't know your own value. You should know your own value at all times, and to give people that self-confidence that they're worth a lot more than what other folks may have made them feel like. And I find that a lot of times when it comes to these support groups, you have folks who come in with some bad experiences that are looking for a safe space to build their resolve and courage again. But then you have folks who are just driven to make change and driven to keep excelling. And that's a very fine balance. And I think very few people realize the responsibility that you take, because I'm pretty sure that a lot of your members end up building personal bonds with you, and you almost become like a confidant to them, or even a mentor in many levels. So thank you for what you do. I think it's extremely important, and I want to start unpacking that a little bit. But let's put that subject on the side, and let's go back to these companies that start getting involved with supporting leading cyber ladies.
Mm-hmm.
A bit of a risky one, but I'm going to ask it nonetheless, because that's just my parlance. Um, how many of these companies do you think will just be seen as, hey, they're paying lip service to the idea of supporting women in cyber? Do you actually see these companies go back and reflect on how can we implement some of the changes that we're hearing at the group? How can we implement it in our companies? Do you provide them some feedback? Do you provide them some tips maybe on what they could be doing? Or is it just, hey, we just need to be involved so that we're not seen as not supporting the cause?
Sometimes I do have a feeling that it's the latter for some companies, but
Fair enough. We won't name them. That's fine.
yeah. I think most, it all depends on the people. There can be people from the same company who react differently, right? And I think it's important to reach out to as many people as possible, even in the same company, build contacts, because one person is not going to make the change. It has to be a collaborative decision and collaborative approach. But I do talk openly with those companies' representatives, and sometimes I do get questions. As an example, one of the company recruiter manager reached out to me and said, "Hey, I want to hire security architect, and I really would like to make sure that women see that and they open to this position." I was like, "Sure, send me the job post, and I'll share it in my network." And I always do that. I always share with all women. But when that person sent it to me and I looked at the job description, I was like, I can share, but let's talk about what do you want to find, because we have critical aspects for your job description, and we
Right.
have good to have. And if we talk about women, the statistics, they want to make sure that they 100% fit for the job description, and then they apply. And I also tell all our members, forget that, right? See, like, read between the lines what exactly they need and apply and go to interview and talk and represent what you can learn, what you can provide, bring to the table. But back to that case, so I provided my feedback to that job description, and I said, we can post it as is, or maybe you can modify it a little bit and really decide what's important, so that you have some room for women to consider it actually and apply. And they taken that decision, advice, recommendation, and they actually modified slightly to open it up to more. So things like that happen, and I think it's important that companies continue collaborate with groups like Leading Cyber Ladies and other groups to get this direct feedback from what we experiencing in community, and the challenging why they may not get enough hits for their jobs, right? And vice versa.
They say, right, life is 10% experience, 90% how you respond to it. And I
Mhm.
think that's very well summarized in exactly what you just said. Let's go a little bit further into that. Now, I did mention at the start there's going to be some stormy areas, and I think we're getting into that right now. And I'm looking to cause a little bit of a thunderstorm, not just for the effect of it, but really because I want folks to really get to understand how personal the political is personal, and vice versa. I want folks to realize some of the realities on the field. Helen, there must have been some opposition to the work that you were doing. There must have been some naysayers who just felt that this was just, dare I say it, a lot of folks lose the term, oh, this is just a feminist fad or something like that, and they use it very ignorantly. How did you respond to some of
Definitely, we had opinions like this.
that?
Um,
Call them
um,
opinions for now to be politically correct. Fair enough.
yeah, yeah. Well, the first break in that view we had when we started partnership with DEF CON
Hmm.
in Toronto. DEF CON, our hacker group, community group who ran very technical sessions. And before we started our leading cyber ladies, I did attend DEF CON several times on occasion, and it always been intimidating. And I was like one of the few women attending, and never mind asking questions. So one of the to break that cycle of thinking that we are just feminist group, we are not, was partnership and actually running events together and bringing more women into their DEF CON and bringing their expertise into our. So more we work together with other groups, other cybersecurity groups, communities, companies, and so on, we're gonna continue breaking that uh, opinion of us being just about women and gender. We are not. We about providing opportunity for everybody and bringing the difference and open mind uh, to the table.
The idea of an open mind to the table. I'm sure that as you started seeing some changes happen, there must have been some cases where things did not go entirely as planned, where someone may have said something inappropriate or just not acted in a way that was suited for your meetup, so on and so forth. How do you deal with these sensitive situations?
Um, we deal with them professionally.
Yeah.
um, Frankly, we didn't have anything that would be really negative. We did have some odd comments sometimes, and like I said, we always respond in professional manner. And usually people understand and correct themselves, and this is why we have to continuously work on that. I know there are some cases in perhaps somewhere in US, maybe a bigger cybersecurity conferences where you may still see some harassment for women and so on, and leaders recognizing that, and they acting and they fixing the behavior, and they making everyone aware this is not acceptable, right?
Oh,
We are all equal in the space, and the fact that I'm different gender, it doesn't allow
no.
anyone to treat me anyhow different. We all deserve respect, we all deserve recognition, and I'm glad to work with leaders like CyberX, DEF CON, and other groups to make that impact and continuously fix professionally those
Yeah.
problems.
So let's look at some of the impact that your organization has had, whether it's leading cyber ladies or there are different societies for women in cybersecurity here in North America and around the world. Of course, you've had an impact demonstratively as well in getting more women into cybersecurity and more sort of minority groups into cybersecurity. One of the questions that was asked to me prior to actually this session going live was, sure, now more women have gone into cybersecurity, but do you see that more women are sort of in the operational, administrative end of cybersecurity and less on the technical, or are you seeing a little bit of a spread there?
I definitely see more on non-technical streams,
Yeah.
maybe on the sales, data privacy.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think it's bad. I do wish more women were also going to technical skills areas. And I actually see it might be more um, longer process, I would put,
Yeah.
right? You do need to have a technical background in order to be able to work in a technical field of cybersecurity, but it's not impossible. And I think as long as you have interest, there are different paths and career changes along the way, even if they started in a different field. They might eventually switch if they find something interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of companies, and I keep encourage you as well, if somebody's listening, provide educational on different streams for your employees, encourage them to take perhaps fellowships or switching roles or trying different roles and make them learn different aspects of cybersecurity or different roles. So even though I do find that there are more people in non-technical streams, I think it's not a problem right now. We might still get there, and especially with the younger generation that have receiving current education in computer science and cybersecurity, we'll see more women in technical field.
First step to success is getting started. So I assume that with
Yeah.
getting started, that's where you need to be, and there's still a long journey to go. As Maddie once quite eloquently put it, the CEO of CyberX, that success is not a matter of perfection; it's a matter of a work in progress, and you continue progressing on a particular path. Now let's go back to this the impact of leading cyber ladies, and you mentioned that it started off Tel Aviv, and then you started a Toronto chapter. Did you begin to see other countries and women in other communities, let's say in India or other places of the Middle East or in other European areas? Did they start reaching out about creating chapters based on what you had started?
Yes, definitely. And it's not always leading cyber ladies.
Yeah,
And it doesn't have to be. It's not all it's not a goal to call them that way. But
yeah,
I do have dear friends in India and Europe who are inspired by work we do here in Toronto and Tel Aviv, and they are reaching out and they engaging in their own local chapters for women.
yeah.
Similar work, similar mission, helping, getting engaged, everybody, and so on. And I do work with them in different areas. So for me, it's right now Europe, India, US, Canada, other locations as well. And I support them in their journey as well and help whatever I can.
Have you found yourself being invited or to different school boards, for example, to speak about women in STEM, women in cyber? Most of the environments that I've seen, for example, when I came to the Canadian Women in Cybersecurity Conference, it was mostly post-secondary. Have you seen any interactions with younger women and those who are interested in STEM, perhaps in the school boards, perhaps in private schools? Any engagements that you've had there?
Yes, for sure. Um, aside of leading cyber ladies, I'm also involved in Hack Student organization. We educate high school kids in cybersecurity, and we had enormous. So we kind of partner together with leading cyber ladies. We bring women into sessions, more women into school cybersecurity sessions, so that they see as an example that it's not men-dominated field, even though we're still working on that ratio. But we want to let them know that they are role models and we have women in this field. So we had several sessions, several engagements with different school boards in Ontario, and we're continuing those projects going on. We have bigger plans for the next year. It is challenging with the new normal, but like everybody else, we're pivoting and we're making it work. So definitely more we let kids know about this opportunity, girls, the better we can build our next generation in terms of diversity and opportunities.
Now, I want to, forewarned is forearmed. I want to unpack a little bit on the diversity side. And this is a question that's been lingering in my head for some time. And that is the aspect of not just when we talk about gender, male and female, and disrupting the binaries, I want to talk a little bit about sexual minorities as well, and how working in a technical field, how hyper masculine and hyper heterosexual these spaces are. We've got a long way to come in terms of creating more safer space when it comes to sexual minorities. Any thoughts on that, Helen?
Um, well, I think it's a general problem in a
Yeah,
field, right? It's not just cybersecurity. We I've seen different. It depends on the community, right? Some communities are more open-minded, some less, and it's for us to actually. Hold on a second. I have to
not at all.
decline this. Did you do you see me on back?
We can see
Okay.
you on back. We're back live.
Okay. So I've seen different communities, different responses. We still have work to do. Generally, Canada, I love how Canada in general approaching this topic, but we have to set an example for other countries, how we should treat and how we should let everyone be equal in this space and
Yeah.
provide them opportunities.
Absolutely. And I think the mere fact that we're having this conversation signifies the fact that we are well aware and that in this political climate, it is high time that we have these conversations around ensuring that we're safe on every social construct that may exist to ensure that everybody has a fair and equitable chance to participate in the cybersecurity space that is continuously seeing a talent gap. And we need more folks in this space in different varieties and different stripes. Helen, we've got a few more minutes, and I want to go a little bit deeper into your experiences in being a leader. You hear a lot of stories. You hear, success stories, you hear pain points, you hear struggles, you hear trauma. How do you, as a leader, Helen, keep your sanity? And more importantly, how do you maintain your composure amidst everything that you get to be at the face of?
I think all leaders have challenges, similar challenges, difficult choices to make, right? The most important for me was empathy, right? And listen to people and hear them, right? Be um, don't be drowned into your own goals, yeah, selfish goals. Even though you have to work for you and think what's best for you, but without thinking about others and without listening to what people who you lead actually want and how they respond, you won't be a good leader. And mentorship is a big part. I do mentor myself, different people in one or another way. It might be more official, less official, doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
I encourage other people as well. As we evolving in our career and as we growing to be a leaders, future leaders, we have to always remember where we come from and not to forget that you received this mentorship, you received the support others as well. You might be at different stages in your life. I still require mentors for different things, and I have my mentors as well today. But I do mentor other people, so it's kind of two-way road, right? You get something, you get support, but you also need your support. And if you are a woman or a minority and you achieve something in your life, bring somebody else with you, guide them through, right? Don't forget, don't just be covered up and not just focus on your own goals. So that's what I ask everybody else to think about. Just give back to community a little bit of your experience as well.
A very good measure of a person is looking at how they treat other people. And I think that's very evident in how you've come across in this discussion so far. Helen, a few more questions, and I'm getting a couple of them coming in through the live stream or through some of the other areas. So thanks to the CyberX team for making this very seamless for me. I've got a couple of tabs open, but it's very seamless and clean. The question that I have, and I'll rephrase it a little bit, is on the aspect of what are the areas of cybersecurity that if you're a young girl, going in high school, planning to go to university or college, what are the fields or the sub-disciplines within cybersecurity, at least the top three, that you would recommend for them to pay attention to?
Mhm. Definitely cloud security.
Okay.
So everything is in the cloud, and we have a huge subset of cloud security and application security and everything that's in that area.
Yeah.
Compliance and regulations, that another area that we have to also think about, and perhaps incident response area. So those three primary topics. There are other areas, very interesting, very
Yeah.
curious, and I definitely encourage whoever is learning, find out about different streams in cybersecurity and see what's interests you. But you definitely have to know about cloud security regulations and incident response, because those three you're gonna come across wherever you go.
Very interesting. And I have another sort of question that's come up here, which I think stitches very well into what you've just said. And that is around the question of language. So a little bit of context is often when you look at job descriptions, they talk about must know English, and bilingual is an asset. Multilingual, yeah, definitely. Let's chat. What's the importance of knowing more than one language to a cybersecurity professional?
Um, more not technical language like Java, right?
Yeah, but more the natural
Yeah,
languages.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, I actually, that's an interesting question. I haven't thought
Yeah.
about that, but it's definitely people who know more than one language. They have a better opportunity to understand how perhaps different nations or different cultures are interacting, and
Yeah.
the specifics of communication between each other, right? For
Yeah.
example, my first language is Russian, and English is my second language. I did learn a few other languages as well. It helped me a lot in my career in regards to understand this misinterpretation that might be lost in differences of languages.
Yeah.
Maybe that's another quality that a lot of people who come from different areas of the world have
Yeah.
better communication between each other, because they might recognize those differences, how people might express themselves.
And I think it's from a threat hunting and an intelligence gathering perspective, knowing different languages and even different languages come with certain ways of thinking. I often find myself,
Mm.
just if I can take 30 seconds, is that if I'm stuck in a particular situation and I'm problem solving, I won't be thinking in English. I'll think in my mother tongue or something else. So different languages orient you to think differently. And I think that could also impact how we search for threats, how we gather our intelligence,
Mhm.
and how we communicate what it is that
Mhm.
we've understood in terms of proactively assessing the risk posture of an organization. A little bit more in terms of questions that are coming in. This one's an interesting one as well, so keep them coming. I'll try to get to as many of them as I can. Um, to be a good cybersecurity professional, yes, it's good to have the technical know-how. For example, the technicalities on how do you conduct a pen test or cloud security or whatever have you. But there's also an importance for the cybersecurity professional to be well-rounded and well-read. There's a lot of information out there. Which are your go-to sources to keep yourself aware of what's going on around the world and where the next bunch of cyber mayhem may be emanating from?
um, yeah, similar question. One of them, my mentees actually asked me recently, and I said, you know what? There's so much information, the sources are limitless, right? And you have to really filter what's where you want to invest your time in terms of learning. Um, I approach this topic by okay, there are sometimes just I'm curious and I'm just gonna find out about this thing, right? And then I've satisfied my curiosity and I move on to my regular topics. But when I'm specializing in specific area, for example, application security, I do learn a lot from communities, from blogs, right? I do learn a lot from like OWASP project, right? And different courses and even news, right? And even discussions. I think there is nothing like having a very open discussion with the expert who did something similar and experienced that. So I cannot really recommend one specific source. Go all everywhere. Maybe cyber exchange would be a perfect way
Yeah.
to connect everybody, right? But
Yep.
it's a collection of sources, and cyber exchange is a collection of sources that we
Yep.
having here.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, just find your topic and follow that.
One of the things that I tell my students is that, of course, know what you do not know, but it's completely fair to not know certain things and to create a speciality in certain areas and have a general know-how of other things that are going on. I
Mhm.
think that humbles you, but that also teaches you when you don't know something, it's best to stay silent and let the person that knows that particular environment talk and lead us through the solutioning or whatever else we find ourselves in. So a couple of more questions, some a little teasing and some sort of matter to the point is if somebody wanted to participate in leading cyber ladies to your meetups, etc., what's the process?
Mhm. Before I get to that, I wanted to actually pick you on that being silent comment. Come on, Ali.
Well,
I would. I
within a
mean,
certain
it depends.
context, yeah. If you don't
In a
know
session,
something, it's best to sort of hear what the experts have to say, right?
no. I agree. If you don't know the topic,
Yeah.
you shouldn't be elaborating on that topic. Let's put it this way.
Right
But
on.
if you don't know topic and you want to find out, asking questions is a good way of
Yeah.
learning things, right? And I wouldn't say being silent
Yeah.
completely. Ask your questions, and sometimes people who are not part of this topic asking very
Okay.
interesting questions that it makes
Yeah.
think the experts. So I would encourage, ask, don't be shy, but
Right on.
definitely don't elaborate on something you don't
Yeah.
know or
Well,
try.
well
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. In regards how to join us, you can join us. You can find me,
Yeah.
of course, everywhere online. Yeah.
Yes.
But also we have a meetup page.
Yeah.
Also published on LinkedIn and CyberX that you can join and see our next online event. And hopefully in future we will actually meet in person as well.
Yeah.
I really miss our personal in-person meetups.
Now that you brought up the subject of in-person meetups and the pandemic, I mean, we can't dodge that topic. It is the elephant in the room, or the bunch of elephants in the room. Um, have you found that the pandemic in any way has impacted women in cybersecurity specifically? And I'll give you a little bit of context as to why I asked this. At the first cyber exchange, we got into, when we had the stream on women in cyber, we got into some engagements around how working from home has reinforced certain gender rules and gender norms. And that's resulted in a lot of women not having the kind of time while they would be at the office, for example. Have you seen that kind of an experience through this pandemic?
Yeah, definitely. It's affected us in many different ways.
Yeah.
I think the experience the balance of family and work is difficult, especially for those who have younger children.
Yeah.
The other point that I think positively actually affected our situation here with gender and recognition and diversity is because when we're having a calls, I find we're more getting to the point, right? There are less perhaps side comments or
Yeah.
looks, right? Sometimes, and I think it's breaking that barrier. You have more opportunity to give your expertise. So
Yeah.
yeah, it is challenging, but at the same time I think we have to find opportunity, right? And we have to kind of hold that opportunity to actually bring it back when everything gets back in person, if we ever will. Of course.
Your prediction for the future in terms of how this pandemic is going to impact the cybersecurity space, I think, is going to impact is a bit of a misnomer statement. It is impacting already. But
Mhm.
where do you see cybersecurity going in the new normal?
Well, it's we have to think about more where the information, how the information is being transfer. I think a lot of companies faced um, forced digitalization. Yeah.
Yeah.
And many weren't ready for that. I think that's a huge security threat
Yeah.
for the company. So more security forces will have to apply on all the concept of remote work and remote communication and the um, data security and so on.
Yeah. And I think as citizens as well, this conversation on cybersecurity has become more and more onto the table simply because with discussions around contact tracing, discussions around how do you protect the home while it's now becoming the main block for enterprise. It's really starting to open up the conversation on cybersecurity, and more people are talking about it, less so as a buzzword and more so quite critically as well. And that I would argue is perhaps one of the benefits, if you can
Mhm.
use that term in quotes, of what this pandemic has done to at least the cybersecurity discussions and some of the translations to those who may not necessarily be in the field. It is not just a matter that cybersecurity is for a bunch of people, it's for everyone as we all engage digitally and online. We have a couple of more minutes, and I'd have to ask this question, and it comes from, I'll name her as well. It comes from Farwa, and she goes back to, hey, Helen posted a cat on the Cyber Exchange wall. Helen, do you have a cat? And if so, can we see the cat?
Well, unfortunately, my cat passed away a year ago, so I don't have a cat right now.
No, no worries. Well, you've got one on the Cyber Exchange wall that has become very popular, and Farwa's cat Petunia says hello to you. So I guess that's great.
Thank
I
you.
I have two cats who are very much part of our family, and I know that their memories bring me a lot of joy, especially when I'm out of the house. So I'm sure you've had some lovely memories, and glad to see that you're a fellow pet lover as myself. So I guess that's why we bond so well on various areas that we discuss on. Before we
Mhm.
close, I really want to give our audience one more optic into your sort of perspectives. If you had to recommend a book or a movie or some artifact that someone who wants to get into cybersecurity should pay attention to, what would that be?
Mhm. Well, I say cybersecurity is not only about uh, topic of cybersecurity. It's about your skills, how you can see the world, how you can position yourself in this world. And this book that I'm going to recommend, I read it actually two times. One many years ago, and then maybe a year ago. And it's about a business. It's about running business. It's about
Yeah.
war. How you running your business as a war CEO and so on. And I think we cybersecurity experts, we are in consistent war against threats, and we have to position. So I definitely recommend. It's a fun book. The Hard Things About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz.
Okay. Hard things about it.
um, yeah, and there are a lot of hard things in life, and I think it's very motivating and very fun book to actually read on the side of your cybersecurity education topics.
And I think, Helen, with everything that you've just said, you've empowered everyone to realize that it's important that as individuals, we know our own value and that we add tax to it as well, because we all have something that we bring to the table, and we should learn to appreciate that for ourselves while we emanate that to other people. So before we close, my responsibility is to make sure that I wrap all of our discussions and summarize it succinctly for all of our viewers. And what I will say is that the best way I could summarize it is with the lovely artwork that you have behind you. And the typewriter really caught my attention because you've really focused on telling stories. But more importantly, you've really personified this idea of when we listen to somebody speak, you listen to understand, not just to reply. And we have many tools by which we can reply once we understand. Some will work through a typewriter, some will work through just releasing oral stories, some will type it out in a text message. Listen to understand what somebody is saying. And I think your capacity to listen in whatever forms people have given you their opinions and thoughts in has allowed you to become the leader that you are. And more importantly, is not just to compete, but you've become a collaborator in this space. And that makes you certainly a standalone personality, a standout personality, an outstanding contributor to the world of cybersecurity, and a cherished member of the Cyber Exchange Advisory Champions cohort. Helen, thank you so very much for your time. To our viewers, tomorrow we will be joined by Mark Dillon, another member of our advisory, who is the VP of IT at Waterloo Hydro. We'll be talking about a little bit about cyber terrorism, a little bit about nation state actors and bad actors representing different nation states, and more importantly, what keeps him up awake at night when it comes to our essential architecture and infrastructure that powers our electricity, our water, and for lack of a better word, our sustenance in general. Helen, thank you once more to our audience again. Cyber Exchange, the community is in its beta stage. You can join in. But from August 10th to 14th, the Cyber Exchange 2.0 conference kicks off, and we invite all of you to attend. Registration is free. Helen, once again, thank you for your time. And since you mentioned that you speak Russian, I'm going to give my Russian a try here and say "Do svidaniya." Did I get that right?
You got it. You got it, Ale. Thank you,
Well
everyone.
done.
Be
Take,
brave.
take care. Thanks, Helen.